Washington, after 1785, becomes more exclusively reliant on enslaved labor to carry out the massive tasks of reinventing Mount Vernon as a kind of British estate. But in those years, he did change the management of enslaved labor in both principle and practice, and tried to make some amends to eliminate the most brutal aspects of the institution of slavery. In one regard, most notably, he developed a highly original system of accounting for labor that he hoped would make supervision more rational and humane and eliminate the need for any kind of threat of physical punishment. He ultimately failed in that effort after 7 or 8 years. There could be no good slaveholder. Slavery could not be improved or ameliorated in the language of the time. And Washington resolved to emancipate the enslaved people he owned, not in direct response to the appeal of abolitionists, but rather in his recognition that the ideal of rural life and agricultural bounty that had attracted him to the British culture of improvement would always remain in conflict with a system of labor that rested on coercion and a denial of individual liberty. But again, it was only in his plans for yet another reorganization of farming at Mount Vernon that Washington indicated his intention to, as he said, liberate a certain species of property, to emancipate the enslaved people that he controlled. And he would do it by reinventing the farms. And his plan was to lease the individual farms at Mount Vernon to experienced British farmers who would carry on his agricultural innovations and experiments without enslaved labor. It was an improbable scheme from its inception, and Washington never found suitable farmers or ever found the rental income that he considered a prerequisite for freeing the enslaved. But the plan, which I think has really first been laid out in this book, and a plan to which he devoted an enormous amount of thought, is the best surviving evidence of how Washington thought a large Virginia state like his own might prosper without slavery. Emancipation, of course, would instead come through Washington's will, in which he guaranteed freedom to the more than 120 individuals he owned. But in the absence of any principled statement opposition to slavery, the example of Washington did little to resolve the contradiction of slavery and freedom that remains the most difficult challenge of understanding the legacy of the founders.